Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by Sean Koufax.
Hi.
And, of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and this podcast needs an enema.
It does indeed, and we have gone to the prescription place and picked up one, and we enemagized. That's not a word. We've injected ourselves with a little bit of fun because, man, these last couple episodes have been kind of a downer. So we said, hey, Patreon people, let's hype us up. Let's make us happy again. And we gave you guys a couple of things to vote on this month, as we do every month for our Patreon supporters. That's patreon.com/HMP. We do want to thank all 44 of you who help support this show. And remember, you can vote for the show, or the movie rather, that we watch every month by going over to patreon.com/HMP and joining up at any level. So we thank you guys for that. So let's go over the ones that we had in the order with which they came in, okay? Down at the bottom of the barrel was Two Guns. Not a lot of heat behind Two Guns. But slightly close behind that one was the Sam J. Jones Spirit. Little bit of hype for that one. A few people said they would enjoy some 30 Days of Night. Little horror fans there, but an overwhelming majority, if you couldn't tell by the music coming into the show, is Batman from 1989. And I can't believe it. We're going in on our 6th year here, boys, and we have yet to review this movie. How have we gotten this far even?
I don't know, but it worked out well because today, the day we're recording, is the 30th anniversary of the release, right?
30 years, man. Holy cow.
And I know originally when we first would throw this out, we wanted to save this for a very special episode. But what's more very special than the 30th anniversary?
I think not a whole heck of a lot, man, because I remember this thing, and it's interesting because we're recording this literally on the 30-year anniversary of Batman 89, and it's also my dad's birthday. So, and I remember seeing this movie at the beach when I was 7 years old, and, we went to the movies, and I was super stoked to see this, and, I think the movie delivered a little bit. We're still talking about it, 30 years later here.
Big summer movie. I think all of it. Well, I don't know about the insurance adjuster over there, but I saw this with my dad as well. I started to say, I bet all of us saw this with their dads. And I thought, some of the historical stories I hear about the first generation insurance adjuster not being the coolest with the second generation insurance adjuster. They may not have gone to see this
Things
movie
get, shall we say, adjusted over time.
Yeah, you are right. I did not see this with with Sean Koufax Sr. I saw this movie the weekend it came out. It was insane. I mean, you guys remember?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous.
That's what I tell people most commonly about this movie, like kids that are just younger and stuff. I'm like, you honestly have no idea what the marketing campaign and just tie-ins and everything.
Well,
Batman everywhere.
There is one thing that you can point to for those for younger kids, which is when Star Wars.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. That's really the only
when
other
The Force
comparison.
Awakens came out, that's the closest thing I could compare to it.
But even then, it didn't.
No, when Episode 1 came out.
Oh, I forgot about that. I don't remember that.
Episode 1 was about the last time that happened, where it was just about as ubiquitous as this was, where everywhere you could not get away from Batman in 1989. You just couldn't.
It was insane. And one of the things that I want to bring up today is that because there's some really well trodden ground here that we're walking across by going Batman 89.
Oh yeah.
And so there's certain things that, like, I mean, like everyone who's ever reviewed this movie says the same three things. One is that this is more of a Joker movie than it is a Batman movie. Two is that, like, it is a singular man's vision. Like, it's so clearly Tim Burton, which is true. And three is that Jack Nicholson, to that point, like even 20 years later, had made the most money of anyone ever to just be an actor in a movie because of this movie.
There might be a point about this.
He made somewhere around $60 million for this movie.
Estimates as high as $96 million.
I mean, insane. Just insane. And so, when it comes to like the well-worn ground for Batman, like one of the things that I really want to talk about this week is some of the stuff that like, because when's the last time you guys saw this movie?
It's been a couple years. I've seen Batman Returns far more times, far more recently than this.
I feel like it's within a decade. I feel like I watched it at the big screen like a couple of years ago, but I don't really.
You probably watched
remember.
the 25th anniversary re-release.
Probably.
I watched it, and that's probably the last time I saw it. And I probably sent you a text like, "Hey, you ought to go see it."
Yeah, so probably 5 years ago. That sounds about right.
Yeah,
I haven't seen this movie for 20 years.
Wow. Well,
so,
before
at least.
Yeah. Now, before we get going here, we got a couple of things to get, because I trust me, I'm as amped to get into this as you are. But let's do this ahead of time here.
It's time for Bruce's comic book connection.
I don't know how we're gonna do it. We've done 8 billion things on Batman, but let's see what Bruce pulls out of the old quiver this time.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that Warner Brothers superhero movies, perhaps all DC movies, I would say even superhero movies as a whole, really hinge around the success of one character, and that character, of course, is Vicky Vale. Because Vicky Vale first appeared in 1948 in Batman number 49, and Miss Vale is a journalist. Her first appearance was in a story called Scoop of the Century with an exclamation point. Now, sadly, this story did not involve ice cream. But it turns out pretty much from the beginning, Vicky's purpose in the comics was to date Bruce Wayne and be suspicious that he was Batman. And I don't think you have to rely on exceptional skills of deduction to recognize that Vicky Vale was a character created to give Batman someone analogous to Lois Lane, complete with an alliterative name. Now, Vicky Vale remained a regular in Batman stories for about 15 years. That is, until a fellow named Julie Swartz showed up, and as DC editor-in-chief, he axed a number of Batman supporting characters. In addition to Vale, he also axed the original Batwoman, Bat-Hound, Batgirl, and Bat-Mite. They all bit the proverbial bat dust. But in 1977, the intrepid reporter reemerged to let us know her name ain't Baby, it's Vicky. Miss Vale, if you're nasty. Actually, her name was Miss Vale Powers, as she was married at this point. But her triumphant return was short-lived because she soon disappeared for another 5 years, only to return in 1982 under a completely new creative team who had no idea she was married in her previous appearance, so she's suddenly no longer married with no explanation. I suppose folks weren't exactly sticklers for continuity in those days. Ah, heck, who am I kidding? Comic book folks like myself have always been neurotic about continuity. The problem is in 1982, we didn't have Twitter to whine about it. Most towns didn't even have comic shops, so diehard fans in 1982 were relegated to standing around the spinner rack at their local Rexall, screaming like madmen at the kids wandering in to buy the latest issue of Richie Rich or Casper the Friendly Ghost. Or maybe not. I don't know. I was a wee lad at the time. Back to Vicky Vale. In her 1982 appearance, it was explained that she had been in Europe for a while to explain her extended absence. So that's a long trip to Europe. She became Bruce Wayne's romantic interest again, earning the wrath of Catwoman. And I think that might be the reason why idiots say "row" when women have a disagreement. But Vicky disappeared from the comics soon after Crisis on Infinite Earths. But in Frank Miller's Batman Year One, she's a gossip reporter who flirts with the judge during a shoplifting trial. Vicky returned in 1989 to coincide with the release of Tim Burton's Batman. She once again began a romantic relationship with Bruce Wayne, but became upset over his frequent absences. Bruce struggles over whether or not to tell her he is Batman, but decides not to, which leads to the end of their relationship. Vicky reemerges yet again as a host on a talk show that is a comic book version of The View. Guys, is The View still on TV?
Yes.
Oh, man, that is ridiculous. I know Seinfeld gets the tagline, but The View really is a show about nothing, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But in 2009, Vicky is given her own mini-series, one called Gotham Gazette, that is a tie-in to the Battle for the Cowl storyline. The conceit of this story is that while the rest of Gotham is worried about the disappearance of Batman, Miss Vale, yes, I worry that I may be nasty, so I call her Miss Vale. Well, she's more concerned about the absence of billionaire Bruce Wayne. In the New 52, Vell is present from the beginning, though characterized as more of a socialite than a reporter or love interest for Bruce Wayne. Despite being an integral part of the 1989 movie, Vicky Vell does not appear in Batman the Animated Series, but Summer Gleason, the character Summer Gleason, does seem to have a lot in common with Vicky. Apparently, there was an OnStar commercial featuring Batman, and Brooke Burns played Vicky Vell in that. Do you guys remember OnStar?
Yeah.
I had a GMC Trailblazer or something. It had OnStar, and it was worthless. I'm telling you, I'm glad it went away. Do you guys remember Brooke Burns?
No.
Oh, I remember Brooke Burns. She was on Baywatch Hawaii. Anyway, I guess the long and the short of it is that Vicky Vell started as a wannabe Lois Lane. Was probably fair to even say she was a forgettable character for the first 50 years of her existence. But in 1989, thanks to Tim Burton and company, Kim Basinger made Vicky Vell a household name. For a little while, at the very least.
For a hot second. Well, let's get into it. Here is the fake trailer for Batman from 1989. "30 years ago, a hairdresser and a guy named Goober joined forces, and the superhero movie game changed forever. A movie that would defy expectations, break box office records, and create a level of merchandising not seen since Star Wars. Mr. Mom stars as Batman, and for the first time, the Dark Knight was a real thing. Alec Baldwin's old lady shows that she's not just a pretty face. And R.P. McMurphy is the Joker in one of Hollywood's most historic back-end deals that would net him a reported $50 million $1989. That's $103 million $2019. Sit on that one for a second. Yowzers. With music from the guy in Oingo Boingo and the director who brought you Beetlejuice and Pee-wee's Big Adventure, comes a superhero movie that every superhero movie owes a debt to. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? Batman, rated PG-13. All right, everybody, that was the fake trailer for Batman 1989. Thank you, Patreon supporters. I got to say, I'll just say this going in. What a delight. Oh, what after just being punched in the face week after week, to finally be able to turn on something that I know that I love in advance and to get to love it again. Whew, what a joy.
I think it's good for the show. I think it was starting to show, watching too many things we didn't like in a row. We were starting to become the kind of podcast we didn't want to be, and I think people were noticing that. So I'm glad we're getting back to the positive side.
A lot of people were just like, oh my God, just stop being so negative about everything. Just bring a smile back to people's faces, and we're here to do it. So, Sean,
it's true.
Jump on.
And so, say what?
I said jump on. You go.
Okay, so I hadn't seen this movie in 20 years, and I did a super deep dive on this movie. Because I wanted to know more about it, because I really didn't. I mean, I know the movie inside and out. I watched it 100 times when I was a kid, but I didn't know the in and outs of this. And so we got to go backwards for a second when it comes to Batman, because I always thought that the way that this movie came to be was that Tim Burton makes Beetlejuice, and they already have the idea of making a Batman movie, and they go, hey, you did such a good job with Beetlejuice, why don't we give you Batman? But that is not the way that this happened. This is not the way it went down. They always knew that they wanted to make a Batman movie. They also knew that they wanted Tim Burton to be the director of Batman. But what they didn't know was whether or not a Tim Burton movie would sell to a general audience. And so he makes Beetlejuice first. And based on the success of Beetlejuice, they then give him Batman. But it was already his to take first. He just needed to show the studio that he could make a blockbuster movie in the first place. That movie being Beetlejuice, which, what a weird gamble. That movie, that's the movie that you're going to base making a Batman movie on.
Because that is a wildly bizarre movie that, like, when you look at it on paper, should not sell.
In all fairness, though, he also had Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, Pee Wee's Big Adventure under his belt. So if you had misgivings about Beetlejuice, you just look at Pee Wee's Big Adventure. That's your template for a Batman movie right there.
Well, and that's what happens, right? Because he's got this major studio exec behind him. Because he came through the animation system. I believe I'm going to get this wrong, but I believe it's UCLA. I could be totally wrong. But from there, and like he goes through the Disney program and all that stuff when Disney wasn't making good stuff, like you're talking about like The Sword and the Stone and like Black Cauldron and just things that I'm sure they have their fans, but they're not it's not Disney's shiniest hour.
Yeah. You don't go to that in your first top 10 for sure.
Right. And he goes and so he comes through the studio system doing that. But then he makes a short movie. He makes a short film, and it gets seen by this executive at Warner Brothers, and that executive is like, "You are a massive movie. You are a massive movie director. Like you have clear vision. We want you to make movies for us." And so when Paul Rubens is shopping around for Pee Wee's Big Adventure, they're like, "Hey, we've got the perfect weird director for you. This guy who made this Frankenstein dog movie is going to make your movie, Pee-wee." And so they thought that this movie would do well. They thought Pee-wee's Adventure would do well, but they didn't have any idea how huge it was going to get, because that movie surprised everyone, including Pee-wee Herman and Tim Burton. And so on the coattails of that, he gets Beetlejuice. On the coattails of that, they start thinking about using him as the director for Batman. And they were like, no. That is too big a budget for this guy who's literally got one motion picture, like studio movie under his belt. Let's try him like with a middle of the road, like movie. Like, let's give him something that isn't going to kill us if it doesn't make a ton of money. And that movie's Beetlejuice. And what a massive, massive gamble for Tim Burton specifically, that, you know what, this is what I'm putting all of my cards on, is Beetlejuice, so that I can direct Batman later. That is so crazy to me, and not only does it work, it's perfect. I to think that the same director in 3 years directs. I'm sorry, it might not be 3 years. It might be 4.
Yeah, I think it's same idea.
Right.
Close window of time.
Right. But, Pee-wee's Big Adventure is a little earlier, but then he goes Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, all 3 of those movies back to back to back. Well, and they're in such a short amount of time where within 4 years, the entire world knows who Tim Burton is. It's so crazy to me.
Yeah, it was insane. And then he follows that up with Batman Returns and then Ed Wood and Mars Attacks right after that. Now, Mars Attacks was really, that was hit and miss with a lot of cult, people like that and everything. But through 94, man, he was just, or really 92. Ed Wood's kind of become a classic back in, fourth. But 92, all the way to Batman Returns, he was just kind of just killing them. It was unreal.
Now, talking about another end on the development of this movie. This movie was more or less in development for 10 years, starting in 1979. Michael Uslan, I've talked about him when we talked about the Swamp Thing movie. I've probably talked about him with some Batman movies before, but right. Michael Uslan has the film rights to the character Batman.
Well, him and that other producer, right? Because he talked to DC, but he needed a producer to back him with money, and so it's him and that other guy.
Well, Uslan is who bought the rights. Now, he needed a producer to work with, but he bought the rights, and he has ever since been really, really mysterious about what he paid for them. And for a long time,
which means nothing.
Well, for a long time, the theory was like $1,500, $1,200, $600, like ridiculously low numbers. And he spent 10 years really, really trying hard. He also bought Swamp Thing at the same time to get a Batman movie made and to get a Swamp Thing movie made. But now the new theory is that he actually spent every penny he had on those Batman rights. And one of the editors at DC told him, nobody's been interested in Batman since 66 went off the air. Please don't do this to yourself. But now the theory, and once again, he still hasn't talked about it. It's the sort of thing that I guess there's no public documents for anybody to find out how much he paid. But the new theory is he sunk every penny he could get his hands on into this. And that's why he was working like a madman for 10 years to get it made. Like he either had to get this made or move down into the poorhouse in the Skid Row part of town or whatever. I don't know what the proper analogies are there.
That's the one I'd like to be true, that he gambled everything and won so big.
In fact, like he needed that Swamp Thing, Wes Craven Swamp Thing movie to get made because he had so much tied up. He needed anything to keep the Batman in development. So that's why that kind of got made to a lesser than perfect degree as part of the theory too. But I'm liking this new theory that he actually may have spent what was a lot of money for a lawyer in 1979. I don't know. I was not an attorney in 1979, but let's say $300,000 or $400,000 in today's dollars might have been what he spent. That's crazy to take 10 years to get a return on that.
That's the difference. There's like when you won't tell people, it's either embarrassingly low or embarrassingly high.
Plus, after this movie was made, he got what I would have to imagine was somewhere in the 10 million or more. I would imagine he got as his cut after this got made. You know what I mean? He's getting points off the gross.
And I mean, he's still getting points. I mean, he's getting money off of Lego Batman and Teen Titans.
Yeah. Oh, anything that involves Batman that's not in a comic book, he gets a cut off. I mean, it's just
TV because I thought that he doesn't get TV either.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not even going to pretend to know. Maybe he doesn't get TV. Maybe he doesn't get animated, but he gets live action. I don't know. But there's something in there where he gets everything from, I know, the Nolan movies. Like you said, he's listed as a producer on the Lego movies because Batman appears. The easy way to do it is to just check out something with, I mean, when has Batman been on TV other than animated since 1979?
It's true.
So there's nothing to check and see if he's listed
Gotham.
as a producer. But yeah, I guess he could claim that that's Batman, even though no reasonable juror would call that Batman. but once he got his 10 million, even if there's never another Batman movie, he's set. Now he can breathe easy. Then it's fun to let people think he got it for a wink and a smile. So then he probably enjoys the own legend of him getting it for the cost of a cup of coffee and then making $10 million off of it. But the prevailing theory now is that he actually paid a pretty hefty sum for it.
So I want to ask this question to you guys. So how much of this movie do you love for nostalgia reasons? And how much do you think that you love it just because you think it's a great movie?
I think that doing this podcast, nostalgia has gotten worn down a lot with me. I don't bring a lot of nostalgia points to things, but obviously there is some nostalgia, but I think I like it because it's a cool looking movie. The story isn't anything super, but I like the way it looks and I like the performance we get from a couple of people. I think that the warm and fuzzy feelings I get about the summer of 1989 when I got a Batman logo t-shirt and went to see this are part of it, but I think it's mostly on the fact that it's a cool looking movie.
1989, the number, another summer. Get down with the funky drummer. So here's the reason why I bring this up about the nostalgia issue with this movie is that my children think this is the oldest movie ever. They cannot stand this movie, and I don't know what it is about the way it looks, but it does look very old. And I still love this movie. Surprisingly, I look back at this movie. This is one of those weird movies for me where I have so much nostalgia for it. Like you, Bruce, I don't have nearly as much nostalgia as I used to when we first walked in the door to our massive podcasting empire here. Yeah. But when with this movie specifically, this year 1989, it's exactly the time. Like, this movie was made for me at that time. This is exactly what I wanted. It has my favorite actor of all time in it. I love the guy who plays Alfred. No, it's Michael Keaton. I love
Big Michael Goth fan.
I'm the world. A lot of people love Michael Keaton, but I was going to say the world's biggest, but I'm not. I love Michael Keaton. He's my favorite actor.
Batman needed a dad bod. That's what it was missing.
Well, and that's the whole thing, isn't it? Is that because it's Michael Keaton, then for the next 10, 15 years, we keep getting weird selections to play these roles.
Hey, it worked with Keaton. This should be fine.
Yeah. And also the weird thing that happens on the heels of this movie is that they kind of have like Hollywood didn't figure out that, the secret sauce to this is the superhero part of it. Because for 10, 15 years, they're not making superhero movies. They're making like crime noir movies and like these massive like production design budget movies that are just weird, and we've talked about this a million times, but like The Shadow and The Phantom and like all of these movies that nobody cares about because it's not Batman. And so we keep getting like those aren't superheroes. Maybe they're pulp heroes, but they're not superheroes. And Orson Welles is the secret sauce to The Shadow, not the character of The Shadow.
Yeah, which it would have been great if they'd found a way to cast Orson Welles as The Shadow.
Oh man, Unicron is The Shadow? Get out of here. And so, there's like, it's one of those things where, having the hindsight of what this movie does, where, because I can make a distinction between Batman 89 and then all the other Batmans, because we have reviewed Batman Returns on the show, and I was never a huge fan of that movie.
I think this is the only one that we have been, of the original kind of 4-movie run there. This is the only.
Oh, no, we did Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I thought
we did Batman and Robin.
We did Batman Forever as well. Skinny Bang.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, so we finished out the quadrilogy here.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Now, it took us 6 years.
Talking about Michael Keaton, though, I just want to throw this in there, and it's nothing that, it's one of those things that gets covered every time a podcast covers this, but I still got to say, 50,000 people sent protest letters about the casting of Michael Keaton to Warner Brothers. So this is 1989. This isn't like when people complain about something now. You actually have to get a pencil and paper, or maybe a typewriter, if you're really neurotic and you're typing up the letter. And you have to put a stamp on an envelope. You probably have to leave the house. I mean, some people might just put it out in the mailbox and throw the flag up, but I never trusted that. I always went to the mailbox so that you could drop it down in. And then you got to get the address for Warner Brothers. And in 1989, there's no Google. In 1989, I don't think if given reasonable resources and let's say 30 days to do it, I could get the address for Warner Brothers. Did they just put like Warner Brothers, Hollywood, USA and drop it in the mailbox? Like, I even with the internet, I'm not sure I could get a good address to send a letter to Warner Brothers.
If television is anything to be believed, a mailman will just grab that and just go, I know exactly where this needs to go, and somehow it ends up in the president's hand.
Somebody just addresses it to Yakko, Wacko, and Dot and just throws it in the mailbox.
And it's like, well, that's going straight up the flagpole.
But it is, man, you really had to be more bothered about things in 1989 to complain.
Yeah, nerd rage has always been a thing, hasn't it?
Yep.
But for me, the best part about Batman 89 was the T-shirts. Because prior to, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you know of something I'm missing out on, but prior to Batman 89, the only way to get clothing with the superhero logo on it was to buy underoos. And my family did invest quite a hefty chunk of change in underoos for me, because I definitely liked the T-shirts with the superhero logo, because you could, nobody really got to appreciate the underpants, but they always got to appreciate the T-shirt part, because you just wear that as a T-shirt, not as an undershirt.
And the underpants were for you.
When this came out, suddenly like every flea market in America, every like gas station that sold bootleg T-shirts, like it was an easy logo to bootleg, and it was everywhere. And like anybody you knew had more than one Batman logo T-shirt, and they were wearing it all summer that summer.
When I got my, it was for this, movie and everything. When I got that Batman T-shirt, I didn't want a shirt that said Batman on it or anything. I just wanted the symbol. I'm like,
yes,
Give me the symbol. That's what that's the shirt that's gonna make me feel like Batman, and it did, boy.
And
Boy, did
I
it
feel
ever.
like that opened up the floodgates to the world we live in now, where I've got an XO Man of War T-shirt. You know, I've got an XO Man of War T-shirt that I didn't make myself.
And they certainly weren't making back in when.
Yeah. But one more thing, too. We got to get into some of the actual parts of the movie. But this is sort of a two-part question. So the first part, Jack Nicholson's contract specified that shooting could not conflict with Los Angeles Lakers basketball games.
Right.
What do you think about that? Do you think that's reasonable?
Here's the thing, man. He's first billed on this. He is such at the height of Jack Nicholson. It's unbelievable at this point. I mean, this guy, like, you know, everything. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You got Chinatown. He is like, you know, from that new Hollywood, and he is just absolutely gigantic at the time. So to have him in this movie as the head villain is kind of unbelievable. And I'm going to be honest, he kind of kills it. He really delivers in this role. He's not phoning any of this in.
No, especially since they keep the camera rolling on him scene after scene, where it's like, Jack, just be the Joker. There's quite a few times where they just keep the camera rolling because Jack is being Jack as the Joker, and it works.
Yeah.
The second part of that is, did you guys realize this was filmed at Pinewood Studios in England? So they're shooting in England, and his contract says he has to be able to make it to every Lakers home game.
Oh, I did not catch that.
So that's like the day before and the day after a game. So there's probably a 3-day stretch around every Lakers home game. But also, I don't know if it says a little bit about Burton as a director or what it says exactly. But also, Jack Nicholson's contract said he would only be available to shoot for 21 days, and he shot for 106 days. So at some points, they decided the contract needed to be ignored at times.
It's a lot of time.
I knew that it was shot at Pinewood when I saw Porkins in the movie. That's when I was like,
that's
oh,
how
hey,
you know.
that's
Porkins shows
Porkins.
up. It's Pinewood.
And I didn't even know it, you know, from the hundreds and hundreds of times I saw it when I was a kid. It's only now where I was like, hey, that's the same guy. That's Porkins.
Yeah, I only think I really learned about that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was quite the revelation where it's like, get out of here. What? He's wearing a hat the whole time.
Since it's been 20 years since you've seen it, Sean, I think you might be the best person to comment on this initial scene. But that initial scene with the mom, the dad, the kid walking in the alleyway and they get robbed. I mean,
it totally got me again, because it got me when I was a kid.
It has gotten me at least 7 times. I've probably seen the movie 12 times. It's gotten me 7 out of 12. It's above 50%. But I think that's, and also considering that we didn't have this long tradition of rehashing superhero origin stories in 1989, and also knowing that Tim Burton wasn't what you would call a lifelong Batman fan, I think it's pretty brilliant that scene ends up there. I almost wonder if it's by mistake.
No way, they did it on purpose.
It was so on purpose, and it was so purposefully done that it's just, to me, that's where like the real kind of brilliance of it goes, is because that's exactly where your brain just goes like, oh yeah, so we're gonna see this Batman. Oh no, we're not. Batman already exists in this world. And again, it's always fun when people go, hey, let's go down crime alley.
In fact, not only did it get me, Bruce, when I was watching that scene where I was like, oh man, they're already going with the Batman origin story, it got me so good that when the wife yells at the husband and calls him Ralph, I was like, oh, this must have been before they knew that the dad's name was Thomas.
Yeah. Now, something else that thrilled me, because when this movie came out, Sean, we're about the same age. What were we, about a year old when this came out? We're in diapers, waddling down to the movie theater to see it. Yeah. So I don't know how I remember it so clearly, considering that I'm ridiculously young.
Yeah.
But something else that I loved about it is in this initial scene, you get to see Batman, because as a kid, you've been watching the commercials. You've been wanting to see this thing for 10 weeks before you finally get to go see it, because I was not an opening weekend family. You know, I was like third week family. Mm-hmm. So when I finally do get to go see it, the last thing I want to do is have to wait around all Jaws style to see Batman show up. So he shows up and starts whomping on some villains right at the beginning. And I was grateful for that as a child.
I was, although I do have to, I have to bring this up because we're talking about some very specific things, and I want to talk about something generally here. which is that, this movie is so singular as this is the only thing that's like this, like the two Burton Batman movies. And I figured it out today because why it looks so old to my kids, why it's so different from everything else, even though we're looking at the, like it's the same stories, like the origin stories, it's Batman going after the Joker. Here is the difference, is that they spent so much money on sets on this movie that it's incredible. Just the vast scope of how large these sets are. It's
all backlot. Every bit of it.
It's so crazy. But here's the thing, is that this movie does not feel like it's actually a movie. What this movie feels like is it is a theater production of Batman that they shot with a camera.
An amazingly elaborate stage production, yeah.
Yeah.
And you mean that in all the best possible ways, I'm sure.
I do absolutely, because the style of acting is theater acting. It's definitely not movie acting. I think Nicholson and Keaton are probably, and Basinger are the theater movie camera actors, but everybody else in this movie is being so gigantic. Like even Billy D. Williams is being so huge in this movie.
Not his normally reserved performances.
I'm sorry, I just woke up being me. Nothing I can do about
it. Oh man! Now I'll add this to part of the reason this movie looks so old is, and I believe it was part of Tim Burton's vision. It's definitely part of what they were going for with Batman in this 5-year period. But it was made to be. When I say timeless, I don't necessarily mean timeless in the traditional sense, but timeless in that it's anachronistic. You can't say exactly when this takes place. Some things are meant to look like the 40s, like the Golden Age. Some things are meant to look ultra modern with the Batmobile and the Batwing. Like it's specifically made not to make sense in any timeline. Like even the cars in this movie, I was around and looking at cars in 1989. These movies look like they're about 10 to 15 years older. The cars in this movie
you could easily crash
10 to
those
15
cars.
years older than most of the cars you would have seen in 1989.
Yeah, like the Citation that Vicky Vale is driving around in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's intentionally made to be difficult to put your thumb on when this takes place.
Right.
Like some parts do look like they're from Detective Comics #1 or number 27, I should say, and some of them look like they're supposed to be kind of futuristic, and that's part of what I like about this is the look. And a big part of what I like about this, and maybe we'll touch on this more later, I don't want to get into it now, but is how it influenced the animated series, which I think is what people really love about this.
I think that's what I was going to say, is that this movie had so much of a ripple effect within Batman itself. I think you can't really understate how powerful this movie was in, Batman in the modern language that everyone knows today.
Now, I've also always... when I break it down, it's the question that comes up in one's life from time to time. I've always said this is my favorite Batmobile too. How do you guys feel about the Batmobile in this movie? Because I absolutely love it.
1000%. This is my Batmobile.
Built on the frame of a Chevy Impala, nonetheless.
Yeah, this was my Batmobile until Dark Knight, and then that the bridge making dealio. The Rumbler. You like the Rumbler better? I do. I think it's more practical for what Batman wants.
And we have a pretty hardcore local Batman cosplayer here in the town I live in, and his Batmobile is the Batmobile from Batman 1989. That's what he has reproduced and drives. And I love it that I live in a town that on any given morning around 7:45, I might be driving to work and stop at a red light next to the Tim Burton Batmobile. It's a thrill unlike any other for a guy like me. Yeah, exactly, man. It's the guy from Heroes for Hire. I know him, which is strange because that's a Marvel property that he named his little cosplay company after. But that's another story for another day. What do you think about the bat suit here? I remember being pretty darn impressed with it in 1989. In retrospect, maybe I feel a little bit different about the bat suit. Where do you guys come down on that? Because we get to see it right away.
We've talked about this before, and the big difference between superhero movies and even though this is 89, this is the 90s. This movie, basically.
Essentially.
And so the biggest difference between superhero costumes in the 90s versus today is that it was all about how they looked in still photography.
Yeah.
And the bat suits and all of that jazz, that looks great in stills. What it doesn't look great in is action scenes. And, I can't believe how well they cut around the fact that Michael Keaton could barely move in that suit.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like this is the first superhero movie and or TV show to completely avoid the spandex costume, because you got like the Superman costume from the Christopher Reeve movies. You've got the Batman 66 Adam West costume. And when we watch Legend of the Superheroes, they all have the spandex costume, the Spider-Man costume in the TV movies, and the Reb Brown Captain America costume. They all still relied on the spandex. This was the first movie to get away from that.
And I have the other part to this, which is that Tim Burton himself said to the costume department that he didn't want to see spandex. He didn't want to see underwear on the outside because nothing about that was frightening. And the whole thing about this Batman is that he's supposed to be able to scare people. And, spandex is many things, but frightening is not one of them.
My friend, you need to see me in spandex before you say it's not frightening.
But you know what I'm saying here is that
he's singing Itsy Bitsy Spider for some reason.
Not a social faux pas, but like, like something that actually scares people. Yeah. And it's funny that, Tim Burton really doesn't get enough credit for just how much he contributed to this whole thing, because it's watching this movie, because I watched it again this week and watching it again today or this week. It's one of those moments where you're like, oh, that's where they got that from. Oh, that, a million people have copied that. And this is from a guy who wasn't a huge comic book fan. It is so, it's so interesting to me.
Yeah, the outsider perspective helped this movie a lot.
For sure.
Is it fair to say that as a whole, Hero Movie Podcast is on the record for feeling a certain way about John Peters?
Yes.
Yes, he is the villain.
Okay, so I don't know if this is true or not, but I did read that John Peters really wanted a Nike product placement on the bat suit. So do you think a Nike swoosh would have added to the quality of this bat suit?
Oh, John Peters, why is your name still attached to things to this very day?
And another story that I read, whether it's true or not, only the people who were there would know, but the whole fight on the top of the clock tower or whatever at the end of the movie, John Peters, without talking to Tim Burton at all, or without talking to anybody, he commissioned and spent $100,000 of money when they were already over budget building that set with no scene written for it, and then told Burton that that's where they needed to finish the movie up.
Wow.
So John Peters, more evidence in the chamber that John Peters is a real life villain.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I at least say this in my defense? I cut Barbra Streisand's hair.
His philosophy is, I'd rather have it be known as my movie and be terrible than have somebody else get credit for making a good one.
Well, that has been the legacy he's laid out for himself, so.
Well, he's nailing it.
This character that Robert Wool plays, Alexander Knox, totally a new character for this movie, a creation for this movie. And he's the guy that's really trying to bulldog the Batman story. I guess I like him good enough. I imagine that Alexander Knox is what Jimmy Olsen becomes when he grows up and gets cynical because Superman doesn't return his calls or something. But I kind of feel like Vicky could have carried that whole kind of load on her shoulders. I don't know that we needed to create a whole new character for this.
Well, and what a brave choice to hire a comedian who isn't funny to play one of your main roles.
And one that's supposed to be funny.
Are you? So I'm going to assume that maybe you guys are not Robert Wool fans. I mean,
are there any? Is there a
it's like
Robert Wool fan?
It's like the meme about Avatar when it starts out. Avatar fans believe that in the second movie, just joking, there are no Avatar fans. But anyway, Robert Wool is a person that I probably only think about whenever I watch this movie. I mean, I know he's done other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he in Bull Durham? Was he in Bull Durham? Was he not in Bull Durham? I can't even remember Bull Durham now.
He might have been. Let me look it up.
I don't remember. I listen. Not the biggest of fans.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Like, I feel like he's incredibly famous, and I don't know why, or he was incredibly famous for 3 years, and I don't know why.
Because he was in this movie.
Yeah, I guess that'll do it for you, man. I mean, it was enough to make a star out of Jack Nicholson.
Oh yeah, that flailing nobody.
And I like it that Vicky Vale, the new photojournalist in town, kind of following some tropes, even though it's made by a comic book outsider. New journalist in town, in a city of, let's say Gotham City is approximately at least a million people live in this city, right? But every guy in town has to date the new girl. It's like high school. Even though there's 500,000 women in this town, when a new one moves in because that's who everybody wants to date. I always like that trope in these movies.
All right, so I got it here. I got his filmography in front of me. So you were right. He is in Bull Durham, Bruce.
Yahoo! Score one for Brucey Bruce.
Yep, 1988. So 1988 and 1989 for Robert Wuhl was a gigantic success. But he's in one other movie because he's in our list, like we all know and love. We love that show. And we
Our
love that
list
character.
is huge for anyone who had HBO back then.
And they used dollar signs for the S's. That was clever.
They did very clever. And Kesha later would steal that idea. But
Kesha doesn't exist without Arliss, people. You heard it here.
He is also in one other just massive movie. How many hints do you guys want?
Give me 3 hints, but give them to me one at a time.
Okay, here you go. The year this movie came out was 1987.
A League of Their Own.
No, that was later.
It is I'm not going to give you the main star of the movie because that gives it away almost right away. It is a movie where it is a comedy, but it's also very serious.
You guess first, Adam. A comedy, but it's also very serious. I'll guess first. Splash.
Thelma and Louise.
Okay. Third guess, or third thing. Now it's going to get progressively easier with the hints. It is a Barry Levinson directed movie.
Ghostbusters.
No.
You go, Adam. I clearly don't know stuff. Now I'm just saying things. Go, Adam.
Barry Levinson, 80s.
Serious, but also a drama.
Punchline.
I'll give you 2 more hints. Do you want to hear them?
Yeah.
I definitely need to hear them.
All right. It is set during wartime.
Oh, wait a
Good
sec.
Morning Vietnam.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's.
Oh my goodness! I should have got that with 1987. It's the only movie I saw that year.
On repeat.
Oh man, I love that Adrian Cronauer.
I want to talk about this. Well, first let's talk about the character for half a second. But Vicky Vale coming in here. I always thought this was very curious about this character. Is that she's a photographer. She basically assigns herself to this Batman deal. She ends up going to Gotham. One would imagine if you're going to Gotham to cover this Batman story, you're probably taking a cut in the pay, right? Because people usually ask you to come there for specific reasons. If you go, chances are you're probably not getting paid all that much. We go into her place, man. It is palatial, so much so that even 2 characters go, ooh, a lot of space.
I've got a lot to say about Vicky Vale. First, I have a theory that she won a Pulitzer Prize like the year before. So now she's got to figure out, what can I do to top it? This is like the movie you make after you've won the Oscar, is her moving to Gotham to photograph Batman. Like, she doesn't want to be typecast as the war correspondent. She has just won a Pulitzer and probably got like a bolus of money so that now she can do like freelance what she wants to do and not have to worry about getting by for about 8 months. Because, when you're 20-something, which I'll say that's what her character is supposed to be. I don't know how old Kim Basinger is in 1989, but I want to say when you're 20-something, if you have enough money to live on for 8 months, you think you're loaded. You know what you follow me there, right, guys?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So that's kind of the idea I got. Also, man, I got to say about Vicky Vale that first date that her and Bruce go on, there's something just genius about that whole scene. And
Oh,
also,
man.
as a kid, I thought that's what dates would be like when I grew up and got rich. They've got this long table, one of them sitting at each end of the table so they can barely hear each other talk, and they're eating soup. And, you know, it's like a funny comedic setup on some kind of, I don't know, hacky sketch show like Robot Johnson or The Perch or something. They would probably say, like, what should we do? In this skit, the most awkward food to eat on a date would be soup. So let's have them eating soup. Guy's a billionaire. I bet it's good soup, but still, maybe that's how he got to be a billionaire,
Bruce,
was by serving his guests soup.
Bruce, you're clearly not rich. That's the soup course, my dear. Come on. There's more food that's coming after that. He's a rich man.
Here's what I think the inspiration for this scene is. I think that's exactly how it would go down whenever Tim Burton would go on a first date with someone. He would invite them to his house, have this really long table. They would sit at opposite ends and eat soup because he's weird.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to deny that that's a possibility.
I love that because not only Keaton, but Keaton really delivers the line so well, where she's like, so do you eat in here a lot? And he goes, yeah, I really like this. You know what? I don't think I've ever been in here.
It's so good. His just like, because that's when you know you just got a real good actor, because it looks like that guy's like puzzled for a real second, just going like, I don't know if I've been in here. It's good. It's so good.
Oh, man. Good. Yeah, I grew up in this house. Still haven't been in all the rooms.
And you remember those late nights when you've been gabbing with your butler over a couple of bottles of wine and just yapping about your life with your butler. That's like, what amazing.
Did you remember Jack Palance's brief? Like, Jack Palance is one of those people. His character, mob boss Carl Grissom. When I think back of this movie, I remember way more Jack Palance than you get.
Well, let's not get too deep into it because we're going to talk about.
Well, that's because Jack Palance is just like, he's just chewing on scenery, being as much Jack Palance as Jack Palance can Jack Palance in this sucker, and he's just like, hey, everything is just, it's good, it's crazy.
And his mistress Alicia, who's also double dealing with Jack Nicholson's character Jack Napier, who would become the Joker. Of all the actors in this movie, she might be the one with the highest present day net worth.
Yeah, she could be.
Yeah, when you that happens when you married to Jagger.
Well, no, she's no longer married to Jagger. She's married to Rupert Murdoch now.
Is that right? I didn't even know that.
Talk about crazy marrying for money, man. I mean, maybe they have
she really knows how to pick them, doesn't she?
And it's so weird to me.
Both just so very handsome man, just very handsome.
Yeah. She took a girl under her wing a few years back named Anna Nicole Smith and taught her the way to do it. But anyway, but yeah, I remember way more Jack Palance in this movie than what we really get. But I do like the whole setup that it's Jerry Hall's character is the reason that Grissom is kind of double-crossing Jack Napier, and that's what leads him going down into the vat of chemical.
But we're not going to go through the entire movie, are we?
No, but I do want to talk about the Joker, and that's how I'm getting there. He goes down into the vat of chemicals. We have a hard origin story for the Joker. This movie's the only time in like the history of the Joker, as far as I'm aware of, and I'm one of those guys that's probably aware of more than most folks. This is the only time we ever get a hard, rigid origin story for the Joker. How do you guys feel about that?
For what it is, it's actually really good. I mean, if you throw away, you're just like, hey, the stuff you know about Batman, and you just trust it as this movie level thing, it's done very, very well. I mean, even though I don't particularly like the point, what they do with it and how it's executed is top notch.
Now, something else I got to point out, this movie comes out in 1989. In 1988, what was the closest thing to a firm Joker origin story came out in the Killing Joke comic book. So we get the Killing Joke origin story, we get the Tim Burton origin story 1 year apart. I don't know. How do you feel about those two origin stories? I don't know if I like the idea that the Joker was already like rich, successful criminal who just happened to get dropped into a vat. I really like the down on his luck stand-up comedian who can't take care of his new family, and he gets forced into this, and then it turns into something atrocious.
Oh yeah, look, man, the Alan Moore Joker origin has it all over the Tim Burton oh, by the way, the guy who turns into the Joker is also the same guy who killed Bruce Wayne's parents. Like, that's,
Yeah, gets rid of Joe Chill too, sadly.
It's a little bit of a bow tie for sure.
But it was so successful and so close to this movie. I just wonder if maybe Burton was at least a little tempted to try to play into some of that.
It's
I
possible.
guess the drop in the
I don't think
chemicals
that he was
is there.
even aware of it.
Probably not, more than likely. That's how it usually works. It's just like, oh, he must have seen, and you ask him, you're like, no, I don't know what that is.
But the Joker, man, let's talk about the Joker. I'm normally anti-firm origin story, though. The part of this movie I would say that sits the most poorly with me is kind of how hard and firm the Joker's origin story is. But having said that, once Jack becomes the Joker, I'm loving this performance, man. There's something about this where it's like mostly just kind of like Jack Nicholson, but at the same time, it seems like it's the perfect Joker, and it really colored and influenced so much of what would be done with the Joker later on.
What's amazing is it feels like he's performing for the paycheck that he will be getting. You know what I mean? It's just like he just knew. He's like, I'm going to act so hard in this because I'm going to make so much money, it's going to be ridiculous.
I kind of felt like he was doing a Brando thing where Brando's like, okay, I'm such a big star now that when you sign me, you're going to have to put up with whatever I want to do. But it just so happens that what Jack Nicholson wanted to do was perfect.
It's exactly what it should have been.
Well,
yeah.
The other thing, too, is that with the Joker stuff, the most successful the Joker is, and I mean that as the whole thing, not just Jack Nicholson in the character, but the most successful this character gets in this movie is both times where he takes over the airways. There's something so perfect about the way that both those scenes come off, where it's completely mesmerizing, and you can be half watching this movie, but when it gets to those scenes, at least I do, I stop what I'm doing and start watching the movie again, because I've seen this movie, even though it's been 20 years, I've seen this movie so often that I can recite lines with the movie as it's going on, so I'm doing other things as I'm watching it. But when it comes to those two scenes specifically, where the news broadcast of the woman starts laughing and it's at the exact wrong moment, and that the Joker has already got her, but you want to see what happens anyway. That part's amazing. Or the part where they have the cut where the Joker is on TV at the same time with the guys at City Hall, and then he pushes them off screen.
Yeah, love that.
I mean,
that is a great one. That is a great one.
It's so perfect.
For me, I have my favorite Joker scene, and then I have my favorite lines. But my favorite Joker scene for me is when that doctor with what I think is a German accent is got those really archaic looking like medieval tools, and he said, I did the best that I can, and he's taking the bandages off, and he looks at the mirror, and then he just kind of smashes the mirror in a very almost 1966 level camera angle in the shot they get of him smashing the mirror. But you don't get to see the Joker yet. That really builds up the anticipation. Like, I can't wait until I finally get the reveal on what Nicholson looks like as the Joker. And then it doesn't disappoint when I finally get to see him. But for some reason, my favorite moment of the Joker as far as performance goes is that whole unbandaging, and we don't get to see him, and it looks like a cut scene from an old Twilight Zone where he's just like slowly smashing the mirror on the corner and starts laughing. I love that. And then, of course, my favorite line, I teased that at the top of the show, but when he says this town needs an enema, that came out of nowhere to me in 1989, and now I like look forward to that line to the whole movie. And
he's got a party favor, just like it. Just that's what really made that a great character, and what I think also then while I'm sure that he tried to stay away from a lot of it, what I also feel certainly helped influence to one degree or another Mark Hamill's performance of the Joker is that great Joker dichotomy of crazy, insane, and then that just deadly serious, I'm not messing around kind of thing. And Jack does a lot of that. There's a lot of great wild twists, and still getting punched in the face and then throwing out chattering teeth. It's just like this guy's still messing around. He's getting the crap beat out of him. It's done so well.
And when the Joker first announces himself to the underworld, and he has all the crime bosses sitting around that big long table, more or less announces he's the new boss, the one crime boss says, why should we follow you? And he shakes his hand and the buzzer electrocutes him and he turns into this charred corpse that falls over there. And the Joker just starts laughing and then asks if anybody else has any questions. That absolutely had to so heavily influence a similar moment in The Dark Knight, the Nolan movie, where Heath Ledger is telling everybody he's the new boss in town, basically, and somebody questions him and he makes a pencil disappear. He does his magic trick where he makes the pencil disappear up the guy's nose. I mean, that's just like a grittier version of this exact same scene. It serves the exact same function, and it shows just how powerful this performance was, the impact it had, even with Heath Ledger successfully bringing the character to a whole new dimension and a new height and giving us a new Joker that made us forget about the Jokers that came before. Even that pays so much homage to this performance here.
Nolan has come out and said it. He's literally said that he followed the script of this pretty closely. He made his own movie, but there are scenes that are basically, I think he calls them echoes of the Batman 89 movie.
Well, that one is probably the clearest echo to me. And then the way it ends with him kind of floating in the air is very reminiscent of the finale on this movie, too, where they're all at the top of the building dangling in the air.
I don't know, though. I think that, especially this scene is, way more gruesome than, everyone gets, with the, Dark Knight, you get the, oh, kind of thing. But this one says, no, you're going to watch this man burn and see his charred corpse where Jack Nicholson was just...
But this is a little bit like the TNT blowing up and Wile E. Coyote's charred. This is very
like
cartoon.
Watching the Muppets get electrocuted.
Yeah, well, listen, when you're 7, it's a big deal. It's like that's a charred corpse, and that's frightening.
When I was young, Large Marge scared me more than anything. The Joker could do.
Hey, listen,
I used to get scared by betting barn commercials because they throw mattresses at the screen.
This is also a movie when I watch it. I have to remind myself that Harley Quinn was not a thing. Harley Quinn didn't exist in 1989. She was created for the animated series a few years later. But you see a very, very mild proto Harley Quinn, the way he disfigures and sort of mentally manipulates and just abuses Alicia here. He scars the face of his girlfriend, gets her to wear what some might even say is a Harlequin mask, that white mask that she wears. That's something I appreciated for the first time ever when I was watching it this morning.
Kim Basinger. Let's talk about her real quick. Again, just... I known as a beauty, I think in a lot of times, but I think a lot of people really forget how good of an actress she really is.
Yeah, sure, she's plenty good. Of course, me being me, the main thing I know her from is this movie, and she does a good performance here with some other stuff of note.
Well, I mean, as her later work, I would say, what was it called? It was Alpha
Wayne's
Dog.
World 2?
Oh, I like Wayne's World 2. Yeah, good movie. Was she in any movies with Robert Wool? Because I know about 3 of those now.
She was in
Batman.
L.A. Confidential. She was good in that.
Oh, she's great in that.
She was really good in that. She was in The Nice Guys not too awful long ago. That was a good
that's
flick.
Right.
I mean, I'm telling you, she's had a lot of especially in the later career, a lot of just kind of down low stuff every now and then. She was the mom in 8 Mile. Everybody forgets about that.
Well, the number one thing I think about from Kim Basinger is the 80s. And I'm not sure what movies she was in the 80s, but I know that she made me feel like I wanted to hide pictures of her under my mattress and hope my mom didn't find them. That's how she made me feel.
That must have been 9.5 weeks you're thinking about here, Bruce. That sounds,
yeah.
That sounds like the movie you might have come across.
Yeah, squiggly on HBO, and I still stared at it until my eyes crossed trying to watch it.
Nobody's going, oh, The Natural.
Now, thanks to this...
Oh, man, I love her in The Natural. I'm not kidding.
I'm telling you, man, Kim Basinger's a lot better actress than I think a lot of us give her credit for.
Really?
Thanks to this being the 30th anniversary of the movie, there have been a ton of articles online today that I've been able to peruse before we record. And I ran across one where Kim Basinger says that for years after this movie, she would actually go to the hospital, visit sick kids in character as Vicky Vale wearing wardrobe from this movie, which is something that she had never told anybody about until very, very recently, which I think is also a pretty awesome thing because she was like now every superhero actor kind of does that. They almost kind of have to do that whether they want to or not. But she was not only doing it, but doing it quietly And she's not like the big superhero either, but she is doing what she can. I something about that I thought was a cool story when I read that today.
This makes me so upset, this story, because we keep hearing about the Marvel guys who keep showing up to hospitals, and and now this Kim Basinger story, and I know that a couple of times Tobey Maguire also did that stuff. Yet whenever I show up to a children's hospital dressed as Grimace, they keep pushing me.
Oh man!
We told you no more Grimace. Get out of here, you punk.
We do have a local children's hospital, and I show up as the Chubby Wizard in full costume from time to time, and it doesn't go well.
Okay, I want to ask this question because I have preconceived notions as to what I think the answers are, but where do you guys fall on the Prince soundtrack?
I was obsessed with it in 1989. I don't know that I'm such a big fan now. I think it works well because purple is the Joker's color. Purple's Prince's color. So boom, there you go.
Match made in heaven.
I think it works. I think it works okay with Joker, but anything else, it's completely and utterly out of place.
Yeah, I mean, especially like the museum scene and everything. That's fantastic.
Yes,
that is just so good. When he's throwing out the money, like that. That music's great. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And also, it might be the only time that Jack Nicholson's ever listened to Prince was in that scene.
Oh,
so
I can promise you that was not played on set.
Yes, I totally disagree with that comment, Bruce. Also,
there's
you think
no
he
way.
listens to Prince a lot?
I think that dude likes to get it done with the ladies, and that means Prince.
Oh man, I'm picturing like Frank Sinatra 24 hours a day. Maybe Tony Bennett when he's
women
feeling like...
don't make Frank doesn't get women down for the dirty.
Yeah,
my friend, my grandmother would beg to differ with you.
That's what I mean. Do you think I listen to Justin Timberlake because I like him?
No. But music that everybody likes, I mean, it's just so unbelievably iconic is Danny Elfman's score is just like...
Oh, Danny Elfman did the soundtrack for this?
Holy smokes.
Come on, you're being funny, right, Sean? You knew
Yes,
that.
of course. It's like yes.
I thought John Williams did it. Now, here's a question I have. Danny Elfman also got this job because of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Like, this is his second movie gig.
Yeah. It's kind of astounding.
Did Oingo Boingo have hits? Like, I know the name Oingo Boingo because, like, in the 80s, I would go into a music shop and pick up the cassette tape and say, that's a funny name, Oingo Boingo. But I never necessarily knew a song by Oingo Boingo. What was their big, like, radio hit?
It is.
I'm going to run down some.
They did Weird Science, the theme to Weird Science.
Oh, that's a very good song. Okay, yes. I'm on board with Oingo Boingo now. Favorite band of all time.
All he needs is just one song, and he's like, well, that's it. We're good.
That's how it worked in the 80s, man. You needed that one song that was cool. And Oingo Boingo had Weird Science. They're cool. But talk about a serious step up, man. Like, he was nervous from what I read. Like, Danny Elfman was worried he wasn't up for the job. He obviously, I think you have to look at Superman and John Williams, and that's what you're going to be compared to. But man, did he knock it out of the park with this theme? Just like the 5 or 6 notes in the da 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 da. I mean, that's.
I'd go so far as to say that it's probably
it's
more
Batman.
recognizable.
Like immediately, it's like, oh yeah, that's Batman.
It's so perfect.
Like, whoa, we know the answer to this. That's man, that's some good writing.
And I mean, there's only one John Williams, but boy, Danny Elfman has just really done a good job between The Simpsons, Batman, even the Pee-wee's music. I mean, this is a guy who makes some good music.
Marrying Bridget Fonda, just getting it done.
Yeah. And especially because let's be honest, Danny Elfman's not a great looking dude, but he's an amazingly talented man. So that's where you got to make up for it.
Sometimes talent just overtakes everything else.
And that guy's doing it, man.
Hey, if you got to marry a Fonda and Peter's already dead, Bridget's your choice.
Agreed. All right. Well, before we get down to our final analysis here and everything, we do have to ask ourselves one of the most important questions anyone could ever ask themselves is how does this movie relate back to Sylvester Stallone?
Thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement. Jack Palance is your Stallone connection this week. He plays Boss Grissom in Batman 89, which is great because we get to hear Jack Nicholson's Palance impression, which isn't bad. It's more of a Dana Carvey style impression where he doesn't sound exactly like the guy. It's more about tone and style. Pretty good. It's pretty good. Now, Jack Palance is very Jack Palance-y in Batman 89, which is a very nice way of saying, I don't know if he's any good in Batman. I don't even know if I call him a good actor, period. I mean, sure, he plays the crazy old guy like a champ, but it's only acting if he isn't actually a crazy old guy. Is the weird inbred kid in Deliverance a great actor? Probably not. So we need to ask the question, was Jack Palance crazy? And let's take a look at the tape. Now, yes, everybody knows Jack Palance. When you know the name Jack Palance, you know about the insane one-handed push-ups at the Oscar. But did you know, while Jack Palance was an understudy to Marlon Brando in the Broadway production of A Streetcar Named Desire, Brando rigged up a punching bag in the boiler room, invites Jack to work out with him. One night, Jack threw a punch that, quote, mistakenly, unquote, missed the bag, lands square in Brando's face.
Oops.
Brando is hospitalized, and understudy Palance gets his big break by going on stage for Brando.
Oh,
Jack gets glowing reviews as Stanley Kowalski, which landed him a contract with 20th Century Fox.
Did not know this.
Let's chalk that up for 1 for crazy. And the scene where Palance hits Richard Widmark in the head with a gun in the movie Panic in the Streets, a 1950 movie, the actors rehearsed it with a rubber gun, but when the cameras rolled, Palance substituted it for a real gun. Widmark, who wasn't expecting it, was out for 20 minutes. Widmark said about the incident, "Why did he switch? Who knows?" And in a 1986 interview, he also recalled how Palance would get into the mood of his character by beating on Zero Mostel off screen. A black and blue Mostel had to go to the hospital after his first week on the movie so they could soak him in Epsom. Another one in the crazy camp for Jack Palance. He once fell asleep in his square during a taping of the Hollywood Squares. That's 3 checks. He was infamous for his method style acting. Once, while filming a fight scene with Burt Lancaster, Palance actually punched an unsuspecting Lancaster in the face. Lancaster, being a manly man for real in real life, responded by punching Palance so hard in the belly, Palance threw up on screen. So in my opinion, yes, Jack Palance was a crazy old man. And he would have to be crazy to star in the movie Tango and Cash with star Sylvester Stallone. Hey, there's your Stallone connection. Thank you. I'm Sean Kovac. Thank you.
Thank you. I honestly, I had not heard that story about him before, and I'm not surprised. Jack Palance is a big dude, though, so like, I can imagine him trying to bully around a couple of people. Not shocking. All right.
There's
It kind
also
of
a difference
depresses.
between being a big guy when you're an actor and being like a dude, like a man, like Burt Lancaster.
Yeah.
Everyone would tell you, biggest man on set, gigantic man. Jack Palance went after. Jack Palance went after him. After
That's
Burt
why-
Lancaster, for God's sake.
There's certain people like Lee Marvin. You don't mess with Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin will kill you.
Colin Firth, same way.
Colin Firth. I don't think so. All right. Here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own patented Robin rating system. If you'd like to check that out, head on down to facebook.com/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right there at the top of the screen. And be like the 2,100 some odd people that are, following us on there and throw it a like. Why don't you? Bruce, where does Batman 1989 fall on the Robin rating system for you?
It's almost insulting that you would ask a question like that of a man like me, Adam. But I will say this is good, man. This is good. This is like I don't exactly know what quintessential means, but I'm pretty sure this is a quintessential.
I don't know
superhero
what
movie.
words are, but this is a word.
To me, quint means 5, essential means essential. So this is 5 times as essential as most movies. It's quintessential
Perfect logic.
superhero viewing. This is fully deserving, in my opinion, fully deserving of a Dick Grayson, but also fully deserving of a Kitty Kelly. So did I get that name right? Kitty
What?
Kelly wrote the unauthorized biographies of people. I'm losing my marbles, man. Carrie Kelly. What's yeah. Anyway, Dick Grayson, forget it.
Gee whiz.
It's historic. It's perfect. It's beautiful. It's one of those things. If you want to study superhero movies, this is going to be in chapter 1, along with the original Superman movie.
Indeed, Sean.
Yeah, this is Dick Grayson. I will say this though: if you are under the age of 25, there is a very real possibility that you're not going to love this movie. But I'm barely over 25, and I love it. So me and Bruce are both just barely over 25.
Just barely.
And so, this is one of the movies. I know that Superman really takes the lion's share of the credit for these modern superhero movies, but let's be honest with ourselves. It's Batman. I mean, Burton's Batman is really what kickstarts all of this, and they kept trying to recreate it to no avail because they kept just trying to make Batman and again and again. But this one gets it right. Dick Grayson.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I am the first person to say, I mean, Sean brought it up earlier in the show, is that, there is a level of nostalgia. And I am first and foremost willing to say I know that there are nostalgia lenses on this movie for me. Saw it at a very formative time. It was such a huge and gigantic thing that I don't know that I could be, 1,000% objective about this. It does have its flaws. It's not perfect. It wouldn't be what I would consider a perfect Batman film. But man, oh man, what it does so darn well. You can't not just appreciate it for that. And it did. It laid the groundwork for what superhero films are today. And I posit without this movie, hitting us 30 years ago, that we would be in the superhero state that we are today. So I think a large, large debt of gratitude is due to Batman 89 and Dick Grayson. You can't not just do that. It's just that darn good, man. So. Now I do want to say thank you again to everyone who just happened to vote for this on the 30th anniversary. We didn't know that when we actually planted it into the voting system and everything, but it just happened to turn out. So if you'd like to vote on the movie that we watch every month, head on over to patreon.com/HMP and join up today at any level. All right, and coming up next week, it's nearly at the end of its line and everything, but, we're going to go ahead and just do the last season of Jessica Jones because for some odd reason, these Marvel on Netflix things have said, hey, let's do one more season of Jessica Jones. And so we're going to watch that next week. So the whole season, we're doing the whole thing. So get ready for that next week. In the meantime, Bruce, where could we find more of your work on the internet?
Hey, the day that we recorded this, I also recorded an episode of Heroes and Villains, something I do about 4 times a year now. So go check out Heroes and Villains. I have an interesting episode. This is one where I just take about an hour and talk about some transgender characters from the history of comics.
Sean, what do you got?
You can find me at Preacher Podcasts. Please check that out. Or at another podcast called Hero Movie Podcast. You can go there too.
You ever heard of it? I'd like to take this time to shout out a couple of friends of mine that I know personally, and they have a podcast. And if you are into wrestling, especially wrestling of yore, you're definitely going to want to check these guys out. It's called 10 Bell Pod. A couple friends of mine get together and do this podcast about wrestling. A lot of it very old school stuff. I mean, if you know, you'll know a lot of the names, and some of the names you'll go, I feel like I sort of remember that guy. Well, listen to their show. They can tell you all about the history of these sorts of things. But it's a nice deep dive into wrestling. If that is your bag or you're curious about that at all, check out 10 Bell Pods. A couple friends of mine, and I'd really appreciate that, guys. That'll do it for this week. Join us next week when we're talking Jessica Jones, the final season. For Sean Koufax, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody. And
Goodbye, Marty and Evie.
And happy birthday.
Bye, Marty and Evie.
And happy birthday to my dad.
Happy birthday, Mr. Portrais.
All hail the new king in town. Young and old, gather round. Yeah. Black and white, red and green. The funkiest man. Do in town.